Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice big 5-game baseball slate for you for Major League Baseball. We do have some weather concerns across the board, so we do need to make sure to keep an eye on that going forward. But before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? So let's go ahead and get into it here. So we're going to start with Lopez from Minnesota. Now, he is facing a tough matchup here against Texas, but he's had only one game under 16 fantasy points since mid-July, and he's got 4 wins in a row. He's also had no games over 2 earned runs in the last 2 months other than the one. So I think he's in a really good spot here from a fantasy perspective. He has nice upside, though it is a tough matchup against Texas. So do keep that in mind, but because they have a great offense. But it's a small slate, and you're gonna have to take some chances with pitchers because there's really nobody that's over the top great. Justin Steele is also in play for Chicago Cubs. A 15 to 20 fantasy point game here is in order. He does need to win really to get there, but he is capable of that today. It's also one of the more decent matchups available when it comes to starting pitchers today, so he is one of the guys I like quite a bit. Merrill Kelly also in play for Arizona. He is facing Cincinnati, and he does have a good K rate. Though Cincinnati does have tendency to score runs in bunches, though he does have some potential here, though he does have a low floor. Then we'll look at Barrios for Toronto. Now he does face a tougher matchup here against Baltimore. He's likely going to be in the 15 to 20 fantasy point range. His K rate does limit his upside here in this matchup, and obviously Baltimore has some capability. Then we'll look at Gibson for Baltimore against Toronto. Now Toronto's been very inconsistent recently, and Gibson has had some good games, but he also has a lot of floor games. He is very high risk. He does feel Hail Mary like at his price point, though he has got some potential today. And then Haney for Texas. On the plus side, he can score 20 fantasy points if he gets the win, but his K rate is not good. And while Minnesota is a plus strikeout team, I'm concerned that they may also put up too many earned runs to keep him from scoring a good fantasy point day. Beyond that, the bottom 4 pitchers are all guys that you're going to want to probably avoid. Williamson does have a little bit of upside with his K rate improving, but he's still high risk in this matchup. And then the bottom 3, Pittsburgh, Oakland, and Chicago White Sox, are all stackable teams on this particular slate. Uh, the Cubs, White Sox, and Oakland are all stackable teams on the slate. So let's go and get our catchers here. We're going to start with Adley Rutschman for Baltimore. Now, he does face a good matchup here. He's hitting the ball decent throughout the last 10 or so games, though he has been somewhat inconsistent throughout the season. His home run upside is there, but it hasn't been crazy, though he's managed to score decent fantasy points in a lot of games, even without home runs, as he's having lots of multi-hit games recently. I do like his upside as a result, though he is very expensive on the slate. Yasmani Grandal for the White Sox is in play today, though he is a boomer bust play. He hasn't hit the ball particularly well recently, but he does draw some good metrics for this game, so he's definitely somebody to consider. And then Shea Langurlace for Oakland is a guy I really like with home run potential today. His batting average has been rough this season, but he is hitting a little bit better recently. But if he can swing a home run, which he's definitely capable of, if he draws a start, then he'll be somebody I would consider today, as he's nice and cheap and very good home run potential on this particular slate. Maybe in the first space, we're going to start with Cody Bellinger for the Cubs. I really do like the Cubs' stackability today, though it's going to be somewhat hard to stack them because they're very expensive on the slate. That said, he's hitting the ball pretty well over the season, and while he has been a little bit streaky, he does have home run potential in this matchup, though he does need one to pay off at this price point. Then we'll look at Andrew Vaughn for the White Sox. He's also in play today. He's nice and cheap. Gives you some nice potential today for a decent game. He's hitting the ball a little bit better than average on the season, the last 10 or so games, and he's had some multi-hit games, and he's managed to score fantasy points, and he's nice. That price also helps quite a bit. Brandon Belt also in play for Toronto, as he's nice and cheap as well. He's also hit 4 home runs over the last 10 games. He's hitting the ball very well right now and has big time upside, though his floor games are usually 0, so do keep that in mind. But if he draws a start, he'll be in play. Then we'll look at second base here. We're going to start with what happened here? Oh, sorry. He's already in my thing. G-Loff for Oakland. Now, he is a core play for me today, as he's hitting the ball extremely well recently. He's only played 34 games this season, but he's already has 9 home runs, and he's hitting almost 400 for the last 10 games. He's having some big games even when he doesn't score a home run, so he's definitely capable here. And he's also got a great matchup. Oakland's a stackable team on the slate. Ketel Marte for Arizona also in play. Arizona's kind of sneaky today, but they have been somewhat inconsistent, and he has really been in a bit of a slump, but he does draw home run potential, and he hit 1 2 games ago, and it looks like maybe he's going to get out of the slump now. Maybe in the third base, we'll start with Gunnar Henderson for um, Baltimore, who's also a core play. He's hitting the ball very well recently. He's been a streaky player throughout the season. He goes up and down, but when he starts hitting well, then he's somebody I definitely like, and he's on a bit of a hit streak right now. And so with his price point and home run potential, he's definitely capable on this particular slate. Yoan Moncada is also in play for the White Sox. The White Sox are sneaky today, and they're cheap. They are definitely a team you could stack if you wanted. He doesn't draw a whole lot of home run upside, but he does draw good hitting potential today, and I do like his upside as a result with his price and helps you pay up at other positions. Polanco, also from Minnesota, is a good play today. He's hitting the ball pretty well recently. He's been up and down throughout the season, but when he's been playing, but he definitely draws good potential. I wish his price was a little bit cheaper, however. And then Candelario for, oops, sorry about that. Hang on one second. Candelario for my computer doing weird. The Cubs is a great option on the slate. He's been inconsistent throughout the year, but he does draw home run potential today, and he's had several good games in a row for the Cubs, and he's been hitting pretty well since joining the team. Maybe in the shortstop, we'll look at Tim Anderson. Now he's high risk, high reward. Uh, if he's not got a lot of home run potential, but he does have some stolen base upside, and he's getting some hits, though he does strike out a lot as well. So he's kind of high risk, high reward, but he's nice and cheap and can help give you some upside to pay up at other positions. Corey Seager for Texas also in play. He's hitting 300 with 4 home runs over the last 10 games. He's a great option on this slate, but he definitely is pricey for the potential here. He does need to hit home run to pay off at this extreme price. Elvis Andrus let's see, has hit the ball very well for the White Sox recently with a 300 batting average over the last 10 games and several stolen bases. As long as he's hitting well, then he's somebody I consider. It seems like at this point in each season he gets going a little bit and he has some nice upside as a result. Then we'll look at Bo Bichette for Toronto, who is also pretty expensive, but he's absolutely monstering the ball with a 400 batting average over the last 10 games, 422 that is. He's not striking out very much, and he draws really good metrics for this game. I like his upside and has good potential here. Maybe the outfielders, we'll start with Cody Bellinger, who can play at first base, who I already mentioned. Great play out there. Luis Robert Jr. for the White Sox. He does draw some nice home run potential today, even though he's been a little bit slumpy recently. Looks like he's in a good spot to have a really big game, and so I do think he's viable, though he is very expensive and somewhat hard to roster as a result. Mike Tauchman for the Cubs is a very good option if you want to stack the Cubs. As while he hasn't hit the ball very well recently, he's been scoring some fantasy points, and if he can get over 10 fantasy points at this price point, then he's definitely somebody to consider. Eloy Jimenez for the White Sox is also in play. There's a lot of White Sox and Cubs in this, as you can see. He's also nice and cheap today, and he definitely gives you some good upside. He has some low-end home run upside, and he hasn't been striking out much except he did yesterday. But he definitely has some good potential to score at least some fantasy points, which is definitely something that we need. Andrew Benintendi has been hitting the ball very well, despite not scoring a ton of fantasy points in some games. He definitely draws some good metrics here. He's not a home run hitter, but very much, but he does have some potential today for a good hitting day. And I think the White Sox are going to score a lot of runs on this particular slate. Ian Happ, also for the Cubs, is in play. He's a little bit expensive for what he's done the last few games, but he does draw home run potential today, and he's been somewhat streaky throughout the year, but he looks like he's in an okay spot. Seth Brown for Oakland is in play at this position as well. He has hit the ball somewhat inconsistent throughout the year, and he tends to have a low scoring average, but if he can sneak a home run, then he'd be a guy that I would definitely like to have in my lineup because of his potential there on the slate, but he is definitely a Hail Mary kind of call. Same goes for Brent Rooker, who has really good home run potential today, and he's hitting the ball very well the last 10 or so. He also draws good metrics, and he's even managed to score fantasy points in different ways, though he does strike out a lot, which is a big concern here. Then we'll look at Tommy Pham, who is a core play for Arizona, as he draws good metrics on this slate. He's hitting the ball for 300 of the last 10 games, and he's averaging almost 12 fantasy points a game in that stretch. I do like his home run potential today as well, and while he's hitting the ball well, he's somebody to consider. And then last but not least, Varsho for Toronto, he's kind of a Hail Mary play today as he's been somewhat boom or bust throughout the season. However, he's hitting the ball very well recently, and I like his upside, and he's scoring fantasy points in lots of different ways, which definitely give him some potential. He's also got stolen base potential. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.